versus Icelander Michael Hamilton on Icelander. You got to hope that, I mean, at 2-0, Michael Hamilton, Icelander, it is going to be one hell of an intricate matchup.
I think looking at both sets of equipment is always where you want to start in this matchup. As FAB sitting on all 4 pieces of equipment, Heat Wave, and look, we're getting a banish right away from the graveyard, playing Burn Away for 4 with Go again. A very powerful way to start the game.
Yeah, not bad to just kick it off right there for Go again, saying goodbye to that Phoenix Flame, but you could probably think that there's 2 more just floating about.
Yeah, either 1 or 2. I would imagine that you're, not aiming to just immediately give up the ability to find those Phoenix Flames and then recall them. And yeah, look at that. Just able to make this play because you already had one in hand, one that you could choose actually at this moment to break the chain and return, and then possibly go and fetch later down this chain. But instead, just choosing to go the Searing Emberblade route.
Opting here to use the Quelling Boots right out of the box there. Good use of your resources here to, just round out some of the damage. Burn Away, that's 4. You got a 3 block. Quell away the extra 1. The Phoenix Flame, pesky. Quell away the extra 1. It looks like Michael Hamilton is getting away here with 1 damage taken. Throw in the Aether Hail. Looking at the hand here, 2 Dampens and an Aether Hail. Pitching the Singe here. That hand wasn't all that potent anyways.
No, and if that Aether Hail is blue, it's fantastic. If it is blue, the red is also great. Like, you're actually okay to have that card, but representing a 3-card or a 3-block potential is just fine right now, because what you did is you completely mitigated that first turn where a lot of damage could have been pushed your way. And if you're not going first as Icelander and able to set up that disruption, I think just being content with giving away all the cards in your hand so that you don't take a bunch of damage is just the right play. Ooh, Succumb to Winter, a card you don't see played very much because it costs 3, but it pushes 5 arcane damage in 1 big swing.
And this is a good way to also just get a nice little snapshot. We don't have the deck list right away, but Michael Hamilton has tossed away a blue Aether Hail, and now he's pitching another one. So he might have just been okay throwing away some of these valuable ice cards because of the fact that he's drafted so well. He might have a pocket of 10 to 12 really good blue ice cards. You never know, but he's 2-0. So that in itself is a good indicator that he's drafted well. Being able to pitch a blue ice card and now presenting 5 arcane damage.
Yep.
And I don't believe there's no Tide Flippers, so no standard arcane barrier here. It's gonna be Quell or nothing.
That's
frankly.
right. It's literally just Quell or nothing, and he does have access to a lot of it. So Quell can save him in a pinch if Connor chooses to go that route. But here, just setting up a turn where you push 7 damage on your own turn 1 and arsenal a card, most likely a blue, but if he's playing that, red, just go wide route, then maybe you choose to tuck a really powerful red down there. I didn't quite catch which card he arsenal. Nevertheless, 4 coming across to start off the turn for FAB.
Yeah, there is a Brothers in Arms in hand that can clean up the 4 if necessary. Again, knowing what's in the pocket there for Michael Hamilton is going to be key here. An ice card out of Arsenal is going to create a Frostbite token, right? And those have to be timed very well. But if they are, slid in the right window, it could really shut down a turn.
Yeah, it really can. Choosing to block with a Brain Freeze here, possibly leaking 1 damage. Could also consider more. Nope, he's just going to leak the damage and take it, which is, in his opinion, totally fine, because you are going to want to remember what's coming from FAB, and that's a lot of aggression in general, right?
I have a feeling that Ice Helm is going to be very crucial in this matchup here. Being able to freeze an Arsenal could buy you the time and tempo back to take the damage. Just being able to say, all right, I'm sacrificing a Helm here. That's 1 less card you're going to have. One of the major advantages I feel FAB has here is the fact that they always will have a weapon that can swing.
This is true, yeah. And you do have to consider from Michael's perspective, using the combination of the Helm and the Gauntlets to both freeze and then completely destroy whatever is tucked into the arsenal. So if you can gain enough tempo and push your opponent low enough where they start having to consider, quelling with their hand, and then they maybe try to advantageously arsenal a card and go for a 5-card hand and try to kill you, then at the very least you can disrupt in that respect as well.
Throwing a yellow frosting that's going to block the 3. So 1 has actually gotten through to Michael over here as he's shuffling through. Still has that 4 block if necessary. 1 attack Phoenix Flame. And is there another in the graveyard still?
No, that was the one that he played on turn 0 after banishing that first one. And he paid the 1 resource that he had left floating, and he's going to end his turn in Arsenal there. So this could be a turn that you mentioned just a moment ago where he chooses to disrupt in that way. He did keep a 2-card hand and perhaps is able to present another Succumb to Winter if he does have the resources for it.
Oh, there it comes. Okay, so the Helm's he's opting to go ahead, destroy the Helm, freeze the Arsenal. The Arsenal is no longer used, and he's also using the gloves as well.
Yep. So just what we were talking about, this idea wherein you can completely disrupt the opponent's turn on their Arsenal. And look, he's going to represent another Succumb to Winter. And he is showing that the gloves here are going to tuck in an effect. I believe he's using it for that effect.
Right, and in this case, any arcane damage that leaks through will destroy frozen assets here. Yeah.
And this is a foregone conclusion because at this point there really is almost no way to stop it outside of multiple Helios Miters pitch effects, which is an instant that you can pitch into multiple times combined with some Quell. And at that point, you're basically probably giving up your whole hand just to save an Arsenal. And so it would be a very interesting proposition if that Arsenal is that valuable, but it's hard to imagine a scenario where you end up doing that. And so here, representing that very powerful 5 damage Succumb to Winter, and arsenaling or keeping the arsenal that he had and passing on over.
You and I were talking earlier in terms of different ways to play Icelander. The way I see it, it's, you need blues, you need ice, you need to be able to play off your opponent's turn and really disrupt it. But you've said, you know what, you can go the red route and just burn them down. And it looks like that's what Michael is really doing well here.
Yeah, it's actually my favorite way to play Icelander in draft is drafting a lot of really strong reds. And something like Succumb to Winter is a perfect example of that. But even like, red Aether Hails, things like that, it allows you to just push a bunch of damage that people might not expect, especially if they're playing in a constructed meta Icelander where they're so used to control. If you just represent a bunch of damage out of nowhere from like Arcane, you can just really crush someone. It's to the point where, like, I don't know if you know this reference, but Constantinople fell completely to attack, like in one day. Just like that's what you do. You just rain fire on your opponent and destroy them.
Brilliant. Thank you. So the wonderful part about the set as well is that there's a lot of cards that block for 3, and that's very helpful, especially against Fi. At least trading a card for the Ember Blade, but that's just a value trade that you're pitching to peel a card out of your opponent's hand. But look how wide we're going here. This is pretty nasty. 5 chain links already. Brand with Cinderclaw. You've got, I think, a Ronin Renegade that's maybe started this off, or was it a Dustrunner Outlaw?
Yeah, Dustrunner Outlaw. But interestingly enough, he actually ended the turn by gaining 3 life, which is something you wouldn't necessarily expect from Fi. But it's a red pitch card that gains you 3. And oftentimes that extra life gain, that little bit that you can find here and there, puts you way far ahead. I mean, you think about how we, even now in Constructed, play very powerful, like, sigils that gain you 3. This is that version in Limited.
All right, throwing darts now. It's an Aether Dart red, 3 arcane. Connor here with the essentially with the life totals all even cookus. Then we're basically at this point where do you really want to, how much of this do you really want to give up? And perhaps there's a Waning Moon Chaser off this, so
yes,
you're taking
definitely.
5. Are you safe enough? If you take 5 here to go to 6, are you in any danger zone for Icelander with an ice card out of Arsenal to perhaps burn you down?
Well, you very much are, like, because, if for example, you put your opponent on Ice Bolt Blue, and then they have the resources after they draw up to Waning Moon, that is exactly lethal, so that you're going to have to start pitching, into Quell. But even this, by the way, this Aether Dart did come from Arsenal. It was arsenaled on his turn 1, I believe, which, again, shows that he's playing this more aggressive version. And like I said, it's my favorite version of Icelander in draft, where you're just pushing a bunch of damage. Yes, you can arsenal blue cards and play them at instant speed and try to disrupt, but you can also just go kill your opponent. And sometimes killing your opponent gets you to a nice little 2-0 record.
I think that that's written in the rules, frankly. If we're taking this back, I think that if your opponent hits 0 before you do, that's That's a strategy that I can absolutely
Get behind.
hitch my wagon to.
There you go. So he's representing here the 3 and then the 2, so playing Aether Dart and then following it up with the Waning Moon on his turn. And you can do that because you've played a non-attack, and in doing so, you're turning the Waning Moon activation effect on, and you attack for 2 on your turn. And then you arsenal a card. Now, if that card is something that represents damage off of a blue pitch or off of a blue card, you could threaten lethal here, so Connor needs to be careful about how he chooses to extend on this turn so that he can maybe keep a blue in hand and possibly quell some lethal damage his way.
I like it. I like it. And 6 is a very dangerous spot to be for exactly what you mentioned. You don't necessarily need to kill them now, but you are putting Connor in a position where he's going to have to start pitching cards to quell to keep things within a digestible range. And at this moment now, is starting with a 1 attack into another 1 attack. These little pokes and prods over here will get annoying for Icelander.
It's definitely threatening because Phi can present just outrageous amounts of damage on this turn. And because we're also looking at this and seeing that Phoenix Flame is coming for 1 and there's still a Phoenix Flame in Grave, this is possibly a time where Heat Wave gets used to push extra damage because it represents 2 points of damage by itself, just Heat Wave in this moment. And that's exactly what we see here. Connor reaching for Heat Wave to pump this to 2, and then that will also affect his Phoenix Flame that he'll probably go fetch soon.
Yeah, great call over there. Again, before the damage is calculated or dealt, you're going to, at instant speed, hit the Heat Wave, give +1 to all your Phoenix Flames. So 2 busts through. Michael Hamilton now at 8. There is the Ember Blade. That's going to buy a card out of the hand. Another Brain Freeze, low-value card out of the hand. And here's another. That's another Phoenix Flame for 2 off of the boost from Heat Wave.
Yeah, so this is an interesting position from Michael's perspective because if he can keep one of those Brain Freezes, he has 2 in his hand, while 1 is chosen to block, then you can play a Disruption game and then Waning Moon after that because you already have an arsenal. But if that arsenal is a powerful, red attack, then that's what you want to be playing on your turn because you can push more towards lethal. So you can take a measured approach and chip and chip and chip, or you can take like a big swing approach depending on what's in arsenal.
All right, so looking to just
end it with a critical strike, trying to push for that 4 damage on the turn, right?
So what does he have here? He's got a card in hand. He's opting to potentially think about blocking. Yep, it's going to be another 3 block here. So 1 will leak through. Michael Hamilton at 7. Connor Talty at 6. An arsenal still for Michael Hamilton, but based on the way he's been playing, like you mentioned, this might just be more gas. It might just be another powerful attack, another red Aether Dart. We don't have the deck list in front of us, but it seems like Michael Hamilton has been unafraid to just sort of sit back, tank the damage, and then come in with a big hit like that.
Yeah,
there
so
we go.
0-cost red Ice Bind representing 3, and then it's going to represent 2 on the back end if he chooses to pitch for Waning Moon. The interesting question that you have to ask in this moment, though, from Michael's perspective, is if you choose to pitch the card, you can't threaten lethal on your opponent's turn. So if they, for example, right here, take 3, if Connor just decides to go to 3, you could perhaps arsenal the card even if it doesn't deal damage and just make them consider how their hand plays out and possibly keep them off lethal themselves.
So no fusion on this, but I do not think that indicates whether he has an ice card or not. I think that the no fusion here is just to keep information in his hand. There's nothing to really freeze necessarily on Michael Hamilton's side, and no reason to show Connor what you have.
That's right.
And honestly, frankly, if you're in this situation, there's the opportunity as Icelander to slow things down, to really take your time. It's take it from a marathon. But it looks to me like Michael Hamilton is taking the racehorse approach here of just right out of the gates, just sprinting for the finish line.
And this is the play we were talking about, whether he chooses to try to get extra value off Waning Moon. And I think part of the racehorse approach you're talking about of like, I'm just going to go, is actually represented here in I have to consider as the Phi player if I could just get lethaled now. And because you go to 7, you're out of that range temporarily. But if you take a little bit of chip here or some disruption here, you could be right back in that range.
3 attack being presented to Michael Hamilton. Again, a lot of these cards in this set are blocking for 3. A nice reprieve from, let's say, Tales of Aria that had a lot of 2 blocks. Blocking for 3 is huge. Again, the advantage in the late game is going to be the fact that Ember Blade will always be there for you as Phi. I was trying to make a Friends reference, but I'm not.
It'll always be there for you.
Yeah.
I get it. Now, this is interesting. Frosting blue only represents 1 damage, but it does give a frostbite, and it does force a reaction at instant speed for Fi to go and actually fetch the card into the hand, the Phoenix Flame from the graveyard. So at instant speed, he chooses to react to that. That can tell you a lot based on the composition overall of what you've got left. And I think he only has the flame in hand, right?
Yeah, and we're going to Waning Moon as well. So 3 damage on top, and it looks like Connor's just writing it down. And if this is a very wide turn, Connor needs to present attacks now where Michael Hamilton is forced to pass his turn without an arsenal. And that will basically give you not only the tempo, but also the security that there's no shenanigans. There's no rabbits out of the hat that Michael Hamilton's going to be pulling out of his proverbial arsenal. And, perhaps hunt lethal where he shouldn't.
Yeah, now this is ultimately hunting lethal. This is really pushing a lot of tempo because you're playing a yellow Aether Hail to push 3 damage, which is pushing lethal, and then you're going to follow that with Waning Moon that you're floating resources for already, which pushes 2 damage, and then you're going to arsenal a card and push lethal on your opponent's turn. And so at this point, you're just forcing Fi to give cards. This is the equivalent of what Fi does to everybody else. It's like, okay, I'm pushing lethal on you with a random innocuous attack. Give me a card or you die. And then we do it again, and then we do it again, and then we do it again. It's just that Iyslander does it across 2 turns.
There's still a Quelling Robe. You still have the Helios Miter for Connor. But if you're playing Fi blue cards, you'll jam as many as you can in there against Iyslander, but that's not what you're typically drafting. That's not your number 1 priority. A lot of those, if not all of the Draconic cards, are red only. So if you peeled a few of those, you're going to be in trouble here. So there comes the Quelling Robe. This is not necessarily a choice. It is a necessity to soak some of this damage. Along with the Helios Miter, we're going to be able to tank 2 of the damage, go down to 1 with 1 floating.
Well, I believe he's going to go to 2 because he did a Helios plus a Quell, but at this point, he's just going to have to give him the whole hand almost to keep using Helios and Quell and represent a lot of damage on the opponent's turn. And with no pieces of equipment that can stop Arcane, it is, well, let's just say it's very difficult for him to present lethal without being presented lethal himself.
And with no equipment left, Connor is walking into the party like a nightmare, just buck naked and hoping that things pay off. We're going to start with a Flameboard Retribution, if I'm not mistaken. And there's the Ice Bolt.
Ice Bolt blue that we mentioned earlier comes across for the lethal. That is my favorite.